Welcome to CultureBot Radio. I'm Andy Horowitz, and I am the CultureBot. I recently met with Paige Evans of LCT3, Lincoln Center Theater's new theater project, and she was kind enough to spend a few minutes telling me about what they're doing. We started off the interview talking about the origins of LCT3.
Well, Andre Bishop, who's the artistic director here at Lincoln Center Theater, came up with the idea of having a third theater here to bring new artists to Lincoln Center Theater. And he believes in giving artists productions and in giving them opportunities to really see their work on its feet and cultivating their work that way. And then the idea is that those new artists will continue to make Lincoln Center Theater their artistic home and work on the other stages as well.
Having come to LCT3 from MTC, where she was a long-time dramaturg, I asked Paige what she hoped to do with this new project.
Well, I hope that it'll be very dynamic and eclectic in its programming, and that we'll be able to work with and give opportunities to a great new group and generation of artists, and just bring them here. I think that the idea of providing an artistic home is one that isn't practiced very much anymore, but it's a really, it works well for everybody when it's working, and for people to get to know the spaces and get to know the producers, and for the producers really to get to know the artists and how to work with them and to really build a collaboration, I think is a great thing, and it just doesn't happen very much now. But I think Lincoln Center Theater is a place where it can actually. We have the spaces right here. We have good resources, so hopefully we can offer good productions to people.
With just a few shows under their belt thus far, it'll be interesting to see how LCT3 grows. How many shows a year do you envision doing?
We're doing our second now, to this season, our first season. Next season it'll be 3. We'll do the same 2 slots at the beginning and end of the season, and 1 in the winter, or in early spring. And then, ideally, we'll build to more productions as it goes along. They're very short runs. They're only 4-week runs. And the idea is that we will have a permanent space within the next 3 or 4 years.
As part of the Lincoln Center
somewhere here complex. On the campus.
Since your first production, Clay, was a collaboration with Looking Glass Theater in Chicago and several other national institutions, do you plan on doing other national collaborations?
We're focusing on New York-based artists primarily because of resources and because there are so many great theater artists in New York. But that's not part of the mission. They don't have to come from New York. It's just we don't really have in the budget housing for people, and because New York is such a theater center, I think that we'll be able to get really good people without having to do that.
I would imagine.
Hopefully.
So anything you can divulge about what's in the pipeline, or is it top secret?
I can't divulge yet because we haven't announced. We just have made a commitment to something for the fall show, so that's a huge relief.
Okay.
Because we're putting it together, and we really do need to move ahead with that because it goes into rehearsal at the end of September. But I can tell you people that we've commissioned, and we're hoping to end up producing those shows. But we have commissioned, my first job here was to give out 4 commissions, and we commissioned Nathan Jackson, who is a writer who's just finished Juilliard. He had never had a production at that point. I had just read his play when he started Juilliard. And his play was Brocology that we read in order to commission him. And then it ends up, that was produced at Williamstown last summer, and I went to see it, and we're producing that at the Mitzi. So we're doing his first play that we read at the Mitzi in the fall, and then we've commissioned him and are hoping to do that at LCT3 the following fall. He's handed it in already, and it's a very good play. And I'm very excited about that. Nathan Jackson, Rachel Axler, who was a writer for The Daily Show, but is primarily a playwright, and I just heard yesterday that she's hard at work on her play. We haven't gotten it yet.
Live in hope.
Yes, exactly. Ayub Khandin, who is a Anglo-Pakistani playwright, we commissioned. He's a little further along in his career than some of the other writers that we've commissioned. He just had Rafta at the New Group a number of months ago, and he had a play called East is East that we did at Manhattan Theater Club, and I've just loved his writing for a long time. So he's probably going to write sort of a bigger play, and for one of the other theaters. I think that's what he's thinking. I've commissioned Stephen Levinson, who's a very young writer, who just had his first play done at the Roundabout Underground, a play that I really loved called The Language of Trees. We're commissioning Young Jean Lee.
Young Jean, one of my favorites. Now, we were talking before. Young Jean Lee, writer or director?
Ms. Evans?
I think she's both, but I think that she comes at it seems to me, from a director's point of view, that generally, from my understanding, she starts with an idea that is compelling to her, that's a very general subject, and then casts it without a text. She does extensive auditions and finds people who she thinks have the right qualities that she's interested in, and that she's interested in them as individuals, just based on an extensive auditioning process and working with them, and she thinks that they'll fit together as pieces of the whole in a good way as a company. And then she writes the text from there. So she doesn't start with a text. She really starts with a driving idea and vision, and hires the actors and then writes it.
And that's an exciting and pretty different approach than the way a lot of people make theater. How does that fit in with your vision for LCT3 and what you're doing here? Because you've only been open about...
I have been here for a little over a year, but we did our first production starting in October for 4 weeks, and that was Clay, Matt Sachs's one-man hip-hop musical. And we're just doing our second production now. We're going into tech next week, Stunning by David Adjman.
Well, you're off to a great start. It sounds like you've got ambitious plans in 5 years or so. What do you hope to be able to say about LCT3?
I hope that it's a dynamic place with lots of different, a real range of artists coming and making good theater. That's really, and with diverse audiences, and generationally diverse, and, ethnically diverse too. But I hope we can bring younger audiences into the theater, which is a big challenge for, almost every institutional theater. Yeah. And also that we can just have a really great group of artists who are making, a fairly broad range but of exciting theater.
Well, that sounds amazing. It sounds exciting. It sounds exciting that it's happening at Lincoln Center.
Yeah.
So I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
And thank you for giving me a few moments of your time.
My pleasure.
Of course.